a healthy body is a responsive body. A lot of people say like, oh yeah, I eat really healthy. I eat a big salad for lunch. That salad is like 1,500 calories, right? Because it has a bunch of toppings, it has a bunch of fatty dressing. There's a lot of people who say like, I don't metabolize carbs very well. My body just doesn't use them very well. Well, it's probably because you're getting really shit.
So you're telling me you eat 3,000 calories a day to maintain your physique?
Yeah, I do. It's a full-time job.
That's amazing. And I can't wait to get into it with Rachel Sedwick. I'm so happy to have her. She is an IFBB figure pro. She has a coaching company called Refined Strength, and she's been coaching since 2018. So welcome to the podcast, Rachel.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be on here.
Yes. So let's get into that diet. I am dying to know and pick your brain. How do you maintain that 3,000 calories? Like, what's the breakdown? How do you get to that number? I know it's a lot of questions, but just tell me about it.
Yeah. So I am a professional bodybuilder. That's what IFBB stands for. It's International Federation of Bodybuilding. And part of my goal right now, the phase that I'm in, is building. So I am trying to build muscle in the certain areas that I need to build for my division, which is figure. And in order to add muscle tissue, you have to feed the muscle. It doesn't just grow by training it or by sitting around. So you really have to feed it and stimulate it as like in the most optimal way for you. So me eating 3,000 calories has been something I've worked up to over time, because if I was eating, 1,200 calories at some point, I couldn't just go from that up to 3,000. That would be a huge jump. And it wouldn't really be ideal for, maintaining my body composition that I have now, and energy, digestion. So over time, I've gotten up to 3,000 calories or so. I actually don't know the exact number, but I know it's over 3,000 for my training days. And how it's broken down right now for me is I have 190 grams of protein a day, and then 470 carbs and 55 fats. So for those of you that don't know, I don't know how often you guys talk about nutrition on the podcast, but really simple, easy way of thinking about that is like a calorie is broken down. It's either calories are proteins, fats, or carbs. So those are the macronutrients that kind of categorize calories. So I eat 3,000 calories, that's broken down into protein, carbs, and fats. So because not all calories are the same, an Oreo is going to be a lot different than an ounce of chicken, but they might be similar amounts of calories, like 100 calories worth of Oreos, a lot different than 100 calories worth of chicken. So
and there's a whole formula to kind of calculating what's called your macros. So do you have how do you calculate that for someone who has no idea?
Yeah, so that's the answer to that question is really more nuanced than just plugging in a certain calculation. And this is what I do full time as my job as a coach and business owner. So when someone starts with me as a new client, whether usually their goal is something competition related, like they want to step on stage at a bodybuilding show, similar to what I do, and they need to grow first. So our number one goal is to grow. So we need to find out what the best macro breakdown is going to be for them based on where they've been at. So if someone's been tracking their macros already, what I do normally is I take their macros currently and I kind of reconfigure them a little bit, usually, to just optimize it for their goal. A lot of times people are tracking, but they don't really know why they're tracking the way they are. Maybe their fats are really high and their carbs could come up a little higher and fats lower. So we just kind of recalibrate a little bit to make sure that they're optimized for digestion, for internal health, for performance, for training, and just all of those things. But if someone has never tracked before, usually what I have them do is track what they've already been eating and kind of see where they've been at with just how they normally eat every day. Because I could do a calculation that, there's tons of different macro calculators out there that say these are the calories you should eat for maintenance, fat loss, or building, but the body's not a calculator. And those calculators, the major flaw with them is that they don't account into your actual activity level. They don't account your hormone profile. They don't account your, your what you've already been eating and how long you've been at that place. So something that I talk to a lot of people who come to me and they say like, I really want to lose 10 pounds, or I really want to prep this year, or I want to lose body fat. If they've been trying to lose fat for a while and they've been trying to by like being in a calorie deficit, which is burning more calories than they're eating, then starting another fat loss phase isn't really the best idea because they're just metabolically not ready for that. So what I usually do is like start with a maintenance phase, see how their body responds, and then bring food up from there if we really need to work on metabolism, if their food is really low. Or if we are ready for a fat loss phase, then we bring food down, usually by lowering carbs and fat. And just really depends on the person and how high they are. But usually like a 10% reduction to start is how I do things.
So two things are very clear to me. Yeah. One is that you know what you're talking about. And two is the value of hiring a coach, because like you said, no two bodies and no two situations are the same. Sometimes it's so nuanced. So I think it's so helpful having someone with your knowledge kind of supporting that, because most of us have no idea what we're doing.
Yeah. So and I think most people don't know because like there's no education out there. There's no there's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of like, do this, eat that, don't eat this, go vegan. There's the documentaries and all of the like Netflix things that like tell you to not eat this. Like the most recent one I think is You Are What You Eat, where they have the twins eat like a completely vegan diet, and then the other twin eat like a normal like omnivore type diet. And I've had a couple clients reach out to me about that one. And while I don't really want to say like anything negative about veganism, because sometimes people want to be vegan, that's totally okay. But if you're doing it because you think it's going to help you lose weight better, or if you think it's going to automatically make you healthier by just going vegan and cutting out all the meat and dairy, then you need a little bit more context, because the problem with that kind of thing is like the people that did not go vegan, well, their calories were higher. Like they were also eating a lot of saturated fats. But if you can opt for a more balanced diet with some meat, some plant-based, but also like omnivore type diet with some meat in it, with some dairy, whatever you want in there, but still have it more health focused, like lots of nutrient dense foods, less processed foods, things like that, you can still create a really great result, health-wise, physique-wise, muscle, performance-wise, all the things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem is that,
for sure.
Yes, and there's just so much information out there that it's hard for people to filter out what's true, what's not true. Yeah. So I think that's super helpful. But I also want to know, because in tandem with the food is the working out. So I want to know a little bit about your working out routine, the kind of things that you do, how many times per week, that type of thing.
Yeah. So my current routine is I have 4-day split. So I typically train 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, and then kind of repeat that cycle. So in a 7-day cycle, I might train 5 days. Sometimes I train 4 because I know I need an extra rest day. And that's just kind of the importance of autoregulation and being able to know that, I really will not have a great training session today. I need an extra rest day. So sometimes 4, sometimes 5, sometimes I need to switch something around because of traveling or something like that. But I train really just strength focused in my training. I don't know how else to describe it, but I train based on what I need to grow for my division. So for the figure division in bodybuilding, it's very symmetrical top to bottom. And it's very like hourglass or like X frame. So big shoulders, wide back, small waist, big glutes, quads, hamstrings. So kind of, that X hourglass frame. And we all have different genetics. Like everyone is slightly different in like how far apart their hips are set, or their clavicles, or their joints and things like that. So for me personally, I have my weak point would probably be my quads. So everything else grows at a pretty normal rate for me, and I can like hit it once a week or something like that, and that's all I need. But my quads are not that way, so I do train quite a bit of quads right now. I have my days right now are split into a posterior day, which is the whole posterior chain, so the back of me, and that's back and glutes and hamstrings. And then another day is a all over leg day, so quads, glutes, hamstrings as well. Another day is just back with a little bit of arms and rear delts. Delts are your shoulders. And then another day that is just quad and adductor focus. So adductor is that inner thigh muscle that like helps you squeeze together.
That's interesting. It's interesting that you know exactly, you know, I don't want to say weakness, but the parts that need a little bit more focus, and then you kind of tailor it that way. Because I feel the same way. Like my lower body is just, I need to work it out way more than upper. Like upper, I could do it once or twice a week. It's fine. But lower, I got to like go hard to see.
Yeah, especially with
growth.
like the shape that you want to create. You know, a lot of women really want bigger legs, bigger glutes, and just like more shapely lower body, lower half, so they can fill out clothing better and stuff like that. And so you really have to look at that and see like, well, what is lacking? What do I need to train more of? But not fall into the trap of, this is really common with especially like non-competitors, not fall into the trap of thinking you can spot reduce fat, because you really can't. You can increase your muscle size, and that'll increase the tone and maybe the tightness of your skin, because you just have more muscle pushing against your body fat and your skin, but you're not going to like reduce the body fat in your glutes by training them more. Same thing with your abs.
So that leads me to the question, do you train people who aren't bodybuilders and who don't want to compete?
Yes, I do. I would say my focus is competitors, but I like to call them my lifestyle athletes. So lifestyle clients would be someone not interested in competing. And I would say on my team roster right now, I have about 30%, maybe 20% of them are lifestyle athletes. And some of them have competed before and they don't have goals of competing again. And they just want to train. They want to get stronger. They want to lose body fat. They want to gain muscle. You know, they just want to focus on, I have one woman training for a big like hike type race. I think it's called like 02929 or something like that. I forget what it's called, but so definitely have all sorts of lifestyle type clients as well as bodybuilders.
That's awesome. It makes me so happy because I feel like I grew up and you grew up in a time where like all the women in magazines were like these little skinny things. And now in the last maybe 10 years, strong has become the new ideal of beauty. And I feel like women are really embracing that. So, do you still come across women who just like want to be skinny and don't want to build too much muscle? And if so, what do you say to them?
Honestly, so it's funny. I do come across something like that. So I wouldn't say I come across a whole lot of women who really just want to be skinny, like no muscle tone, no muscle at all, because most of my business comes through Instagram. And if you follow me on Instagram, like it's pretty muscle dominant. So like it's me, it's my clients, and everyone has muscle, even like my bikini competitors, right? So I don't get a lot of those types of clients of women that just want to be small and skinny. I get mostly clients or prospective clients coming in who want to get stronger and want to be more muscular in some way. There's definitely some people who don't want to be like to the degree I am, like I have a bigger body and bigger muscles than they want. So I'll get someone who just wants to be a little toned, or just like a bikini competitor, which is a lot smaller than a figure competitor. But what I say to people who are afraid of gaining, because that's the thing that I come across the most, whether they're competitors or lifestyle clients, is that you have to look at the body that you want. And someone is, showing me a toned, muscular, like kind of fitness model look. And they want that look, but they don't want to see the scale go up. They don't want to see their scary trigger weight. And what I tell them is like, the weight doesn't matter at all. It's such a small indication of progress, of value, of anything. And if you want a certain look, you have to understand that like muscle is dense. It's denser than fat. So like if you go to an old school gym and they have a personal trainer that's selling you on personal training, they'll show you like this is what a pound of muscle looks like, and this is what a pound of fat looks like. And the pound of muscle is like really small, and the pound of fat is pretty big. And that's true. It's like, it's something that people really have a hard time getting over, is the gaining weight when they say they want to look like this. If you say you want to look like this, that means you want to build muscle. And we can't build muscle by eating 1,200 calories. We can't build muscle without some food, without the scale going up, and some body fat gain, because especially females, like, we need body fat to survive. And like, there needs to be some. You can't just walk around shredded year round. So.
And thank God for that. Love the fats.
I know. Yeah.
I think it's funny that women are so focused on the weight, because it's really difficult to gain muscle weight. I mean, you have to train really hard. You have to eat so much food. And it's like, girl, if you don't want to bulk up, it's not like you're going to lift, a few weights and you're just going to go poof.
Like, I've been training since 2013 and I'm still trying to get bigger. Like, it doesn't happen by accident. Yeah.
Exactly. Because I've had people tell me like, oh, I don't want to look like you. And I'm like, you're not going to look like me. I've been training for so long and trying so hard to grow, like so hard. And I'm still struggling. So yeah, I think that's hilarious. So if there is someone who has no idea where to start, maybe they aren't ready for a coach yet, what would you advise for like the first steps to kind of like get them going, maybe get them on a routine? What would be your advice to them?
So someone who's first starting out, oftentimes their first thought is, I need to cut my calories. I need to eat less, or I need to go low carb or keto or whatever it is. And that's definitely not the first step, because what's going to happen when you do that is you're going to get burnt out really quick, especially if you like cut your calories in half, start doing an hour of cardio every day. It's just a lot on the body, and the body, a healthy body is a responsive body. So if you want your body to respond to whatever you give it, you have to make sure like your stress is managed and like you're being kind to it. And so a big part of that is not starving yourself, not overdoing it with cardio and HIIT cardio and circuits and classes and all that. So what I usually tell people is like, if you're not ready for a coach, just start tracking your food. Start tracking what you already eat, and what just the act of tracking it like in an app on your phone is going to do is it's going to show you like maybe some of the habits that you're doing that are not so great. Like, eating an entire bag of chips. You're probably not going to want to track that entire bag of chips, right? You're going to be like, oh, wow, a serving size is like this tiny little bowl of chips. Doesn't mean you have to stick to one serving, but it does just make you more mindful of the habits that you have and how you eat. A big one is like, what are healthy foods? A lot of people say like, oh yeah, I eat really healthy. I eat a big salad for lunch. And that salad is like 1,500 calories, right? Because it has a bunch of toppings, it has a bunch of fatty dressing, and like nothing wrong with salad or any of those ingredients. There's no bad foods, but if you're wanting to be more like just observant and accountable to yourself, you have to think about like where are your calories coming from and what calories are going to be more beneficial to you. So protein, usually people can benefit from increasing their protein to, there's a lot of different calculations out there, but I typically like to say at least a gram per kilogram of body weight. So that could be, most people, when they're not thinking about their protein intake, especially females, they're eating like 50 to 80 grams of protein a day. And if you're 150 to 180 pound female, like that's not enough to sustain you. So you need a little bit more. So I would say have 4 ounces of protein at every meal of some kind, whether it's chicken, fish, tofu, whatever it is you want to eat. Just have some sort of protein at every meal and do like 4 to 5 meals a day. And choose leaner options. Don't cook with a bunch of butter. Maybe cook with cooking spray instead. Maybe sub out your ranch dressing for something a little bit lighter, like a Greek yogurt dressing or something like that. So just using just slightly lighter options doesn't have to mean you switch all your food out for diet food, but just options that are going to be more beneficial to your health and help you keep your calories just more moderate. So you're not having these big influxes and then feel bad about it and feel like your digestion is off. So then you have to like starve yourself the next day, because that's what a lot of people end up doing. They'll kind of try to starve throughout the week and eat really low calories and just have like, little nibbles throughout the week. And then they'll be burnt out on that. They'll be really, really hungry. They'll be fried, especially if you're really busy all the time. You have kids and all the things. And then they binge on the weekends, and they have, they go out to dinner and brunch and drinks, and then their average calories are way up. But if you just kind of moderated your food throughout the week, you're going to have a lot better of a time on the weekend, just staying more on that because you're not starving. So definitely just starting to track your food, and then increasing protein and just moving. Do movement that makes you happy. If you don't want to train like a bodybuilder, don't train like a bodybuilder, but go into some type of gym setting and start moving. And resistance training is always going to help you have that more toned look than something like a cardio class, like spinning or F45 or Orange Theory or something like that. Nothing wrong with those, but they're cardio. They're not strength.
Right. I think that's great. And just like everything else, consistency is key, whether it's eating or moving. It's kind of just keeping it at an even level consistently over time, and you're going to see results.
Yeah. So consistency. And that's like consistency for more than a week or a few weeks. Like it's the building muscle, losing fat, like all of it takes a lot of time, especially if you want to get to a point where like you can maintain your weight. Like if you do a fat loss phase, if you want to maintain it, you have to do it in a maintainable way.
Yeah. I like the saying, like, if it's not worth doing for 10 years, it's not worth doing for 10 days. Like it's going to be a lifestyle thing.
Yeah.
And if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to keep doing it. It's not sustainable, and it's not even worth your time.
Yeah, it's really not.
That's great advice. And I do want to touch a little bit, because you keep talking about getting burnt out and stress levels. So like, what are some other ways that kind of, besides fitness and food, that you can really use to restore yourself? And because I know like sleep and stress and all that stuff, factors into overall health and wellness. So what are other things that people can focus on to really help themselves just be healthier overall?
Yeah, all that stuff is super important. And it's actually like one of the most overlooked things, especially with just people who are, I would say, like high achievers. They think like, oh, I can't eat breakfast. I got to do my cold calling, right? I got to do this and that. I have to just like keep grinding. And that's true. But at a certain point, your body is going to be screaming for that food. You're going to be stumbling over your words. You're going to be, missing something that a client wanted you to handle. You're going to be getting really frustrated and have a short fuse with the people you work with, or the people in your family, your kids, your husband, your wife, whatever. And so it's really important to fuel the body for performance in the gym, but also realize the fuel benefit for your brain too, because our brain uses a lot of our fuel. Really the majority of the fuel that we give it goes to our brain. And so eating enough food, carbs, protein, fat, all of it is really important for your brain health, but also things that just like get you to a peaceful state, because especially high achievers, again, they're always at this like really high intensity level with everything that they're doing. And in order to maintain that and be able to get there more often, you have to have moments of peace, and you have to have moments of recharge time. Whether you're extroverted or introverted, I think that recharge time is really important. And it might be something as simple as just like having one-on-one time with your spouse, where you don't have phones in front of you and you have time away from the kids or something like that. But going to the other things like sleep is one of the most anabolic things you can implement into your life. So it's helping when you sleep properly and with like really good quality sleep, you're getting recovery benefits. So the muscle damage that you did in training, it's being repaired during sleep. Your metabolism works because of your sleep. It works a lot better when you're getting better sleep. When we're sleeping deeply, our brain, I think it's our pituitary gland, creates more melatonin, and that melatonin helps our carb utilization. So if you feel, there's a lot of people who say like, I don't metabolize carbs very well. My body just doesn't use them very well. Well, it's probably because you're getting really shitty sleep. So having better sleep is going to help that utilization. It's also going to help your hormonal health. which hormonal health goes hand in hand with your metabolism. So if your hormones are effed, your metabolism is also going to be that way, most likely. So sleep is really important, as is water intake, those like slow moments, recharge moments, and just having things that can bring you joy and gratitude, or having moments that you remind yourself to be grateful, I think is one of the things that in more recent, in the last couple years for me, have really just helped me grow exponentially as a person and as a business owner too. I started my own business last year with coaching, and there are a lot of really hard moments in that. And I'm at the same time working towards these big bodybuilding goals, at the same time working my last coaching job with a different company. And in order to get past that to where I'm at now, I had to regularly remind myself to just be grateful of the opportunity to be so busy and the opportunity to be in this place where I can start my business. So those great gratitude moments are, as cliche as it sounds, is truly the ticket to success and just like literally anything that you're trying to do.
That's awesome. I think, people don't really think about it this way, but the physical and also business are more than just, like a physical practice. They're also mental. Mm-hmm. They're also, spiritual. They're also emotional. Like there's so much more. It's like a whole holistic kind of practice. And yeah. I think the way you summed it up is really great.
Thank you.
So
it's tried and true. Like it actually works. No, I promise.
I agree. So like you said before, you have been training for a really long time. So I love this question. I'm really curious if you could go back and meet the 10-year-old version of yourself, like what would you tell her? And I picked 10 years old because my daughter's 10 years old. And everything I do really is thinking of her, like, what do I want her to see? What do I want her to learn from me and emulate? I'm going to get emotional, but so yeah, that's my question.
No, that's a really good question. And at first I was like, wow, 10 years old. Like, because most people ask like 10 years ago, right? What would you do 10 years ago? And that was when I was 21. But when I was 10, I think by the time I was 10, I didn't have any opinions about my own body much, but I definitely watched my mom and her opinions of her body. And I wouldn't say that her opinions shaped how I did things in terms of like with my own self. Growing up, I really didn't have much in terms of like body image issues. I never really tried to like diet until I was an adult. But I see that a lot in young kids, especially now with social media being a part of their lives. Because when I was 10, social media wasn't a thing. So I would say me when I was 10, just keep believing in yourself and keep asking yourself questions, because I think that's a big way that we grow as humans, as people, is just asking ourselves questions and being more introspective instead of just receiving information and believing everything we hear about ourselves. Because throughout my like teenagehood, but mostly just like early to mid 20s, such a big part of what I think held me back from doing what I'm doing now earlier was believing what other people told me about me. And so I would just say, like, believe in yourself more than you believe in other people and what they tell you. And if you are going to believe what other people tell you about you, just be sure that they are doing it for the right reasons and because they really love you and care for you. Because there's a lot of people out there that are lost and they will want to bring you down with them. And I have been brought down by other people in my life. I was divorced. I had a really toxic marriage at one point, and I was in a lot of just honestly shitty relationships growing through my 20s that brought me to where I'm at now, where I feel great about my life now. I'm in a really great place, great relationship. But I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't just learned from those things. And part of me wishes sometimes, like, yeah, if I were to go back and tell my 10-year-old self or 15-year-old self, that's what I would say is like, don't believe everything you hear from other people when it's about you, but it's really about them.
Great advice. So you mentioned your mom, like, did she have negative self-talk about her own body, or like, what was it about her that kind of influenced you?
I wouldn't say the negative self-talk was as prevalent as I know, like friends of mine and other people I've grown up knowing have had with their mothers growing up, like she never told me that she hated her body. She never told me that like she was fat or that I was fat or anything like that. But she was dieting my entire life. Like my entire childhood, she was dieting in some way or fighting her body in some way. And I, again, like if she listens to this, like I know that like that everyone has their own demons. Everyone has like a part of them that they want to improve. So I don't discount her at all for that. But I think like if I were to change anything about that, I would have wished that there was just more like education for some people like her in her generation that would have helped her lose fat how she wanted to lose. She was big growing up, or for me growing up. And I wish that there would have been just more support for people like that. That wasn't just fad diets. You know, she did a lot of different diets growing up. And the rise of like low fat foods and low calorie foods and like 100-calorie packed foods. I grew up on that stuff. So yeah, I guess that's the main thing is like she was really good in terms of not putting that onto me and infecting me with that. Cause I know a lot of people do grow up with that. So I'm really happy and like grateful for that wasn't a thing. But I would have wished that she didn't have that for herself, if that makes sense. Because I think she did get that a little bit from her own mother. And just a lot of the women in her family were overweight. And, you know, when you get to a point of being severely overweight, it feels like you're constantly just in a hamster wheel and there's no getting off of it. And you lose the ability to believe in yourself because it's just like you're so far gone and it's really hard to get out of that.
Yeah, we're really lucky in a way to live in this day and age because we just have so much more, you know, information out there. Research back in the day wasn't even done on women. Like we're just starting now to learn about women's hormones and like our cycles and how that affects us and perimenopause and menopause, all these things that like people back then had no idea about.
No. And they didn't care either. Like doctors didn't care. Like it's just, they still don't to some degree, but there is a lot more education now and a lot more people that want to help. There's like coaching, like what I do just did not exist 20 years ago. It was still new 10 years ago, honestly. So I think like just the fact that there are more people out there that want to help, like myself and colleagues of mine, I think that's a really great part of it too. It's also a curse too, because there's a lot of like not great coaches out there, unfortunately, but that's just the way the world is.
So for someone like you, who obviously is very fit, like someone might look at you and be like, all right, she's reached her goals. Like, how does someone like you set new goals? And, you know, how do you keep motivated to achieve them? Who keeps you accountable? That type of thing.
That's a great question. It's funny. I have a coach. So I'm a coach and I have a coach. I have since I started competing. And I wouldn't say that my coach even keeps me accountable because I keep me accountable. I have my goals. Like, yes, I hired my coach and I pay him to help me reach those goals. And a lot of people do pay coaches for accountability. That's one of the biggest reasons I even have a job. But in order for whatever your coach gives you to work, I can give you a plan. You have to be the one that like goes out and does it. So you do have to have your own accountability. You can't depend on you can't depend on someone for that 100%. But for my goals, like in the IFBB Pro League, there's levels to it. So just like any sport, you know, you do an amateur show in bodybuilding, you win the show, go to a national show. You win the national show, you get your pro card. So I did that back in 2017. And I did my pro debut. I did my first pro season where I'm competing in pro shows. And I failed. I did not do well. I wasn't with the right coach, but I was also going through an abusive marriage. And that stress really prevented me from making improvements. It prevented me from getting lean enough because bodybuilding, it's an extreme level of conditioning. And so the stress was a big part of that. Not being with the right coach was a part of that. But 2 years later, tried it again. still with the same coach, not really realizing that that was the thing that I needed the most was a different coach and just a different process to get there. So I think like the best answer to that question is really just like, we're always going to be constantly evolving. There's no just destination, I think, in life. Like you could get to whatever goals you've set, however high they are, and it's not going to make you happy. Like it might make you happy to achieve it. But if you, especially if you're someone who sets really high goals and high expectations of yourself, that's not going to make you happy long-term. It's not going to fulfill you. And so for me, like fulfillment isn't just reaching the goal. It's about being in a place where I can continue making goals for myself. And like I reach a goal, great. Okay, what's the next one? And it's not about like, I'll never be good enough. Like I'm good enough now. I'm great now. I could stop what I'm doing. I could stop bodybuilding. I'd still bodybuild, but I could stop competing and I'd be great. But I know that I have the ability to improve, and I see all of my weak points from the last time I stepped on stage in 2021, and I know what I need to do. I needed to bring up my quads. I needed to bring out my density. I needed more mature muscle. And I needed to just get my life into a better place. You know, since then, I bought my first home by myself. I've started my own business. I've built up a really big coaching roster. I've built my online presence. I'm starting my own podcast soon after I was on a podcast for a while. I moved across the country to Texas. So I've done a lot of things that have really set my life up for a really positive trajectory with my next goal of competing towards the end of this year.
I love that. Congratulations. You've had a lot of wins.
Yeah, I have. It's been cool.
Awesome. So if anybody wants to reach out to you and ask about your coaching program, or they have any questions, like how do they find you? Where should they go?
Yeah, so they can find me so Instagram is probably the place I'm most active on for sure, at least right now. And that is my personal / professional Instagram is Rachel Sedwick, IFBB. And then my business Instagram, just where I post a lot of my client stuff, is refined.strength.coaching on Instagram. And then my website is refinedstrengthcoaching.com. So they can reach out to me there. You can apply to be a client, whether you want to just be healthier and look a certain way or whatever, not compete, or if you do want to compete, you can go there. And yeah, go from there. It's basically someone applies and then I reach out, we schedule a consult call, see if it's a good fit, and then start coaching if it is. So
awesome. Well, if you're interested, definitely go and check her out. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being on the podcast. Like, I really appreciate your time and your knowledge. It's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Carla.